Hello there, this is Denzin, and today I'm looking at this, Martian Empires. Wargaming rules for the wars between Mars and Earth. So War of the Worlds, basically. And here's my little table for it. To be fair, this is probably half the size of a table you need. You need a good 6x4 to play it properly. But it gives you an idea of what I've gone for this particular game. If you've never heard of this game before, it's quite a niche little game. Sadly, going out of print. From what I can gather, I think they're sold by Fighting 15s here in the UK. But the book you can get as a PDF for free. You can download it for absolutely nothing. So the rules are available to everybody. But if you want a hard copy, it's about £5. It's not much. If you're in the US, I think there might be a company still doing the miniatures, but I think the miniatures may be disappearing. Although there's plenty of steampunky style War of the Worlds minis out there. I'm sure in the world of 3D prints you can get hold of tripods and the like. The minis I've got on display here are from the original range. They're a bit old now, they've been around for a few years. They're all metal, 18mm. And it is obviously based on H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. So it is Victorian science fiction. So we're talking Martians in their tripods versus the British here. This is, of course, them landing on Earth, causing mischief. There are a few other games out there, isn't there? Like All Quiet on the Martian Front, which moved the timeline onto World War One. So you got tanks versus tripods, and I can see how that makes sense. But this is more traditional, with the Victorians having a go. So you really need the artillery there to do any sort of damage whatsoever to tripods. So it can be slightly one-sided. But they kind of deal with that in the scenarios in the rulebook. For example, I've got 3 cylinders that have landed from Mars, and there's a scenario in the game where only one cylinder has actually opened up and a tripod has been built. So the British have to get to the other crash sites as quickly as possible and secure them to prevent the other tripods emerging. So the quicker you are, the slower the Martians can gather their forces. But of course they've got infantry as well. You can see the Martian infantry there, squiggling along with their tentacles and heat rays. These miniatures are quite nice because they could work for 28mm as well. There's nothing to say how big a Martian is, really. They're quite bulky. As in the book, they are the size of a bear in the original book. So they've gone for that sort of size. I've got 10mm buildings, so the buildings are slightly smaller than the 18mm, of course, for the miniatures, which are all metal, as I say. So this is my sort of epic scale Victorian game. The actual rules are very interesting. They're very much of a typical wargaming fare. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but movement, giving orders, shooting, hand-to-hand combat, morale, that sort of thing. The interesting addition, of course, is the steam-powered vehicles which they add to it. Now, this setup is, of course, for Earth, with the Martians invading. The rulebook takes us beyond that, back to Mars, and then it goes down the Edgar Rice Burroughs route. So you've got tribal Martians, you've got Imperial Martians, as well as the cephalopod Martians of H.G. Wells, which we have here. So the good thing about this particular game system is you could use it as an historical wargaming set of rules. You've got army lists in here for the British, but you've also got Prussians and the French. So you could do the Franco-Prussian War using this rule system quite easily. You could go down the alternative history route and have the Battle of Dorking and have the Prussian-German Empire invading the UK with some invasion fear scenarios from the 19th century. Or you can go full-on sci-fi Victoriana. So you do have vehicle rules. So you've got walkers, tractor vehicles and flyers. And they can break down, they can go wrong, because they are in the early days of vehicle construction. But in traditional wargaming fare, you can form your units up into line, march column, square, open order for the Martians there. So very historically accurate in the way that units operate. So as I say, you can do historical wargaming with this and just leave out the machinery, leave out the flyers and the tripods and so on. So lots of modifiers to hit for shooting, various weaponry here, the Rangers, so Martian rifles, giant Martian rifles, artillery, earth weapons, vehicle damage, so your vehicles don't just blow up, things can happen to them. So you might find they can't walk anymore if they're a walker. They can come crashing down in AT-AT style. And when you get to Mars, the forces change. So you have British Home Service troops, which I have here, which is the original army of the time period. We've got Gatling guns down here from the Navy. We've got Lancers, we've got Redcoats, artillery. I did paint some Redcoats as green jackets, so riflemen. Just add a bit of variety, no difference in the rules really. But when you go to Mars, they've learned from the Martian technology. So they've got steam tanks, they've got their own walkers and other gribblies. They've got rocket troops, things like that. So it spices it up a bit, as you can see, steam walkers. I do have that as well. So this is my first table build, which was for Earth. So I'll do another video with my Mars build, see what you think of that. So we've got terrain rules, buildings, vehicles, and then the nice bit, which is the army lists and scenarios. So as I say, British Home Forces, army lists, all on one page. Very nice. Points, costs, special rules, and then we have the expedition force to Mars, where we add rocket troops, and we have Martian Askaris, so local Martians who have joined the cause of the Empire, the Karo Smythe Walker, light and heavy steam tanks, and we have cavalry on Martian rides, lizards. So we have Imperial Martians, as you might expect from Edgar Rice Burroughs. They've got flying machines. Then we have some special rules for their different cities that they come from. So the city-states. So you've got the sort of Martian dinosaur type creatures that they ride around on. The tribal Martians, who are a lot larger with their forearms. And again, they've got special rules. The Martian Invasion Force, which is the tripods. And they've got handling machines. So there's one at the back over there, which captures people, sticks them in the net, drains their blood later, as they like to feed. Heat rays and smoke projectors. We've got heavy heat rays. These guys just here have heavy heat rays. The tripods themselves are very spindly because they're metal, and the legs are in parts, so you might need to fix them quite severely if you want to put them together. They can come crashing down if you're not careful. So other models are available, of course. The Prussian Expeditionary Force and the French. So as I say, you could leave out the Martian Askaris and the Clockwork Infantry and the tanks and just use the normal infantry and troops and so on for historical play. Same over here. Balloon Corps. They never did release any French miniatures though, which is a shame. They never got around to it. And then we get the scenarios. So the initial scenario is the invasion of Earth, tripods landing. Then we have a scenario where the British capture a tripod, which evens the scores slightly. And then we got the British invasion of Mars, led by General Gordon. So instead of going to the Sudan, he's off to Mars instead. Whether or not he does any better is up to you playing the game. So we have various scenarios against the Imperial Martians down the canals of Mars, rather than the cephalopods, the H.G. Wells Martians. You can get as well a PDF of the Venus invasion, which includes rules for lizard men. You can get the armies for lizard men. They were available. So you can have the Prussians and the British also on Venus as well as Mars. Very interesting stuff, quite fun, quite quirky, and if you are a historical player, it's a nice way of just leaning slightly off tilter and doing something a bit off. So if you're not mad keen on sci-fi, it's a nice little nod to sci-fi, still using your historical miniatures. But it's a sad game that it's going. Hopefully players will keep it alive. I don't know how much of a community it actually had. I've played it a couple of times. We had a Wall of Worlds day once and we all had a go at it. But I've never got around to playing any of the games on Mars. And I've bought most of the armies for Mars. But with it going out of print, there's a fear that I might not be able to complete that collection. So I'll have to look for alternatives, I think. So if you do know any alternatives, you know any companies out there that do tripods or steampunk Martians, let me know, because they're quite difficult to find. British, quite easy to find. The Martians themselves, not so easy. By the way, when it comes to the scenery, the crash sites there, I made them myself. They're just made out of bits of cardboard tubing, as well as some little resin buildings, of course, and some tiny trees. So a bit of homemade stuff and a couple of shop bought items. But all the miniatures are metal, all painted by me. And sitting on my table, lovely. But as I say, very spindly Martians. Very spindly Martians. But you've got to bring them down somehow, haven't you? I think what I really need is a church, because as we know, tripods stride higher and taller than the tallest steeple in the land. So I need a church next to them just to show the real size there. But anyway, that's my little look at Martian Empires. A bit of a different thing to look at. As I say, a game that may be going the way of the dodo, may be going extinct, just like the Martians. But that's it for now, and I'll see you again. Cheers.